Welcome back to the EAHC podcast. My name is Josh. Today I am joined by CJ.
Hello.
And Sam.
Hey.
So I asked the boys very late last night if they were free today because it's bank holiday, and luckily they were. And I had no topic. They had a topic. So maybe a little bit less contribution from the normal, which is nice because I might actually be able to listen to one back. And we're going to be discussing 10 or more, if you CJ, changes we'd like to see in Middle-earth SBG, which I think is something that you guys had discussed privately beforehand. Is that how it came about?
Yeah, that was me, I think, about a week ago. I said, there's some things, there's a London WhatsApp group chat where quite often we get into interesting discussions, and I said about, this is something you could do without riders, because at the moment they're not very useful, and then it would snowball, and quite often I would say, well, what do we think about this? And then for a tournament I was going to run that got cancelled due to COVID, I said, right, here's some list building options. So I've kind of started to enjoy doing amateur dramatics, rules writing for fun. But there's a couple of things for a while that I've thought potentially change, some profiles you could introduce, some rules for war gear. So then I said in an East Anglia group chat, I said, does anybody fancy having a chat with me about rules we would like to see or profiles we would like to see one day? Yeah. And then Sam said, yeah, I'll do that. So here he is.
Here we are, yeah. As always, I'm incredibly unprepared. So I've got a few things that I'd like to see that are changes to Middle-earth strategy battle game, but they're not necessarily rule or profile changes.
Mm-hmm.
Completely left field, but we'll get to that. Who wants to start? Who's got an interesting?
Yeah. So what I'd like to see is the Witch King's Morningstar flail, which was a huge bit of the film, and I have never seen anyone take the Witch King with the flail in SPG for any reason whatsoever. Azog has a stone flail rule, so I think you could potentially do something similar with the Witch Kings. You could have it so you can only use it on foot, but you say that you can flail, but if you don't drop the fight value, and if you flail against one opponent and you roll a wound, you can apply the effects of shatter, something like that. What do you guys think?
Oh, so it's like in the bit of the film where Eowyn's shield gets absolutely battered, and then her arms, for less of a, it's fucked basically. I think that's quite interesting.
Just for sake of balance, I'd say you just have I don't know, maybe a 4+ to shatter as opposed to just an automatic one. Otherwise, you could really wreck some heroes who really depend on having that shield to be survivable.
I guess that's the same thing as Dane having a free headbutt, though.
Yeah. I mean, that's on a 5+. I want to say maybe a 4+. He can headbutt. But, it's not likely necessarily, particularly if I'm rolling.
Yeah, true.
But it's just a nice little threat to have in there. If I lose this fight, I might lose my shield.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, could you still take it? I guess the issue is, would you still be able to mount him, and then he'd have to be on foot to use the flail?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, optimized Witch King is either on a horse or a fell beast for me. But
yeah, does Azog have to be on foot to use the stone flail?
I don't know, actually.
Right, you make your point, and I will open the book in front of me.
I think he doesn't have to be.
No, I think he can use it whilst he's on the Doggy of Doom.
Yeah, he can. Ooh, that's nasty. I mean, from the back of a fell beast, that's not particularly practical, but
No, quite.
Anyway, food for thought. Sam, what's your first rule?
I was just struggling to think of something first, so I just went for something that's just quite a popular idea, kind of adapting what you suggested a while ago with Faramir's Rangers. At
Mhm.
low points, they terrify people because you could potentially lose half your army to shooting before you'd even got like close to a combat.
Mhm.
So your suggestion you made a while ago was that Frodo and Sam are like part of the required like the army, like Faramir has to be in it, so therefore Frodo and Sam also have to be. That
That's
way
me.
it keeps up some of the points and it's not
Mhm.
going to be so horrific. I mean, I played against Josh at my event back in March, and Josh didn't optimize it like on purpose, obviously, because he thought it's a friendly tournament, not going to be horrible. So he only took 50% at range, and that still did quite a lot of damage. If he'd gone 100%, like he could have easily done, he would have just wiped the floor with me, and there would have been no chance in hell.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, I do think if you include the hobbits and you can potentially include Gollum in that, then that's 125 point tax, I think, and then potentially another 35 for Gollum, whatever he is, or Smeagol, and it cuts down the numbers that Faramir's Rangers can put out. But it also makes life a bit more interesting because you get Sam with his free heroic combats, Frodo has the ring, Gollum's a little bit of a pocket strength 4-2 attack. But yeah, the thing is, you can just take Faramir and Damrod and Madril and just spam the hell out of bows, and then your opponent either hopes for a favourable scenario or just gets pincushioned. Another thing you might try is have warbands are reduced by 3, and therefore you sort of put a cap on the amount of spamming of rangers you can do.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Or if they came up with like some sort of like ranger model where he hasn't got a bow, like it's got like a sort of like fighting ranger type idea. Like maybe they get +1 defense, but they don't have a bow on their profile, and then you reduce it down to 50% bows, something like that.
Well, we've got 2 new ranger profiles on the horizon, so we'll see what they get up to, I suppose.
Anborn in it.
Anborn and
Mablung.
Mablung, yeah. Okay, Josh, what you got?
So my one I've nicked from our group chat when we were discussing Hasharan with Kieran. I think it was yesterday, because I said they're quite good. I think they're quite good at certain things, but obviously they're a bit further down the priority options, especially for my version of the Corsairs and Harad list. Is that they should have blood and glory.
Mm-hmm.
You pay points for it because it's obviously a pretty cool special rule. But if you're fighting a captain or if it's a hero that you actually want to kill that you've had to strike for, but then you actually manage to kill it, it kind of as the rule itself, it rewards you for risking it rather than just chucking your 3 attack.
It also goes nicely into their whole idea, like they're supposed to be assassinated, so therefore you reward them for assassinating like a big hero amongst the enemy, don't you?
Or a similar rule to Raza, maybe, where against that hero they get, is it +2 fight value?
Yeah.
+2 fight value, and I think it's something like +2, it like gets an extra attacks. It's something along those lines.
Maybe not the extra attacks, there are already 3 attacks, but maybe the +2 fight value so they don't have to necessarily use their 1 might point to strike up.
I mean,
so he's got Bane of Kings, the same as a Hashar, and he's got Swarm Protector of Suladan, which is here nor there, and then he's got the +2 fight against whoever it happens to be. He's also got Strike and Challenge. I don't know if Challenge would be in the theme of an assassin, but certainly I think the Blood and Glory would incentivize them to actually go after enemy heroes, because at the moment what you've got is a fight 5/3 attack, Bane of Kings, Troop Chewer, which is almost the opposite of what they're supposed to be.
Also limited though, because you can only heroic combat once. So
yeah,
I think they're very good, and they've definitely got a place within the army at certain points. For like extra strike, that extra 3 attacks in combat is very useful. But yeah, that would be my some sort of change to their profile. I just think they're a bit underwhelming for what they're supposed to be. I remember the article for Hashar when they first came out, and I was like, oh, they're so cool. They're like the coolest model. And then they're just a bit now. So
you could take like the worm profile that me and CJ discovered the other day. Like it's basically if no enemy models like besides the one that he's fighting, can see the assassin, then he gets some sort of bonus, like +1 fight belief, so he goes up to fight 6, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite like that.
There's quite a few things you could do. I just think the profile needs something. Would be my change, I guess. So,
As CJ was saying with Worm the other day when we were playing that, it's so situational, but it'd be a big payoff if you do actually manage to pull off. Like if you do all the combats in the right order, kill everyone within that 6-inch bubble of that fight.
yeah.
You have really put their hero in a lot of danger.
Yeah.
Okay, then my number 2 would be to have limits on elite troops or have troops be unlocked by certain heroes. So the thinking behind this is basically in Rohan, you go with the Royal Guard. In Gondor, you go with Guard of the Fountain Court, etc. Because when you've got access to troops that are that good, you just spam them. But they're not meant to be the rank and file of those warband. So potentially, what I would either do is have some stuff, especially bodyguard units. Say you can have 6 of them in the leader's warband.
Yeah.
The reason that will never get done is because people who have 20 Guard at the Fountain Court already will then be absolutely livid. Or the other route I was thinking of, which would be something along the lines of you have heroes can lead specific troop types. And then you can say potentially that instead of putting Black Numenorians wherever you like in a Mordor warband, you can say that they may only be led by Black Numenorian marshals, Knight of Umbar, the Dark Marshal, something like that. And then suddenly you've got a really complicated sort of list building twist. Like you say that Rangers in a Minas Tirith list can only go with Faramir, Madril, etc.
Yeah.
And suddenly that I think that would throw the entire meta list building thing completely for a loop. Or in Angmar, you can only take the what they call the Dead Marsh Spectres in a Shades warband or something similar to that. I don't think that'll ever get enacted, but I think that would be an interesting way of changing how you list builds and not rewarding sort of spamming of troops that are meant to be. There's only 4 Guard of the Fountain Courts or supposed to be.
Well, you could actually do that in a tournament, couldn't you? Like similar to what you were doing with your siege idea, where you basically enforce things in a way that forces people down a certain path.
You could do it for fun, sure, but in terms of general competitive play,
yeah, from a competitive standpoint, I think restrictive list building is kind of what the Legendary Legions are for, and even that I don't necessarily agree with for tournament settings. So, I don't disagree with the limit on number of elite models, because as you say, they are supposed to be elite models, but I don't know if putting them behind a certain hero or a certain army list is necessarily the way to do it. I could be wrong, but
we'll let people in the comments.
That's why it's an opinion, right? Obviously, we're here for discussion. So,
right, Sam, what you got next?
Well, I did have something to do with Uruks and names, commanders, and that, but something we talked about 10 minutes ago is just sparked something, because it's something that I've always irked me. Going two-handed mounted, I really don't think that should be a thing.
No.
Because I mean, if you're riding a horse, you're galloping past your enemy, you're going to have one hand on the reins. You're not going to be holding your axe in 2 hands and swing wildly at your opponent.
True.
I think it should be you can use, if you've got only a 2-handed weapon, you can use it, but it will only have one-handed effect, so you won't get a -1, but you won't get a +1 either.
Then you start. Dane in particular would take an enormous knock to that, because his whole thing is the 2-handed Burley on the rocket sausage.
Yeah,
or Trident.
Because
he's still
Dane's perfectly balanced.
On the other hand, he's still strength 5 on a mounted unit, isn't he? So, I would say 8 strikes on someone who's just knocked to the floor with strength 5 is still pretty beastly, isn't it?
It's horrendous.
I'm not sure whether you would then get people say, "All right, I'm not going to bother with the pig," because he can be pulled away, and then he's not getting his Burley. Oh,
They
sure.
also might encourage people to dismount him once he gets to a certain point in the game. Like he's on, like let's say, the objective of hold ground. Suddenly, he's a lot better to have dismounted if you want to kill things.
That's true.
Maybe you could have it in conjunction with Expert Rider, because that is there in place so that you can say, okay, you've got a shield and a weapon, and you're still fighting on horseback. The hunter orcs on their fell wargs lose their multi-blades thing when they're riding a warg, because, as you say, they've got one hand on the reins and one hand
On a
fighting.
sword. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could potentially say, if you've got Expert Rider, you can use a two-handed weapon. Speaking of which, give Grimbold a horse. That's not on my list, but we're going to flog this dead horse. Give Grimbold a horse.
There goes my number 8.
Okay, sorry about
Well, I was just going to simply say, was got like that one. You could like make it work. Just simply say he's got a horse option. But if you mount him, then he can't upgrade infantry.
Yeah, and that's fine, because a two-handed guy with 2 attacks and not a very impressive stat line on a horse is not the most threatening thing in the world. But if you can have that option to do the charge of the Pelennor, then I think that'll make a lot of people quite happy. But
Yeah.
have you got another one, Josh?
I'd like LSR to be fight 7.
Ooh.
Only as LSR though, because it's a very. I think it obviously would make him. I don't know how many people take him anymore. Army of the Dead sort of with LSR thing kind of isn't a thing anymore.
Jasmine Tetley does very well with LSR lists.
I'm not saying he's bad. He's very good, but he's also very expensive. And I just think having that extra, or the option to not give him Andoril, so he's a bit cheaper. But again, maybe not LSR then. It's kind of one of those things where you have the option to give him option to give him Andoril, but you could also not.
Yeah, it's got like I think the argument for that could be the same. It's got like he is fighting toe to toe with like a troll chief who is also fight 7, and he's holding his own pretty well.
He's about to get his ass kicked, and then lucky Gollum falls in the lava pool.
That's just where he's rolled badly. He's rolled his 111. He's about to get rendered.
Yeah. He hasn't had enough might left to sort that out. But I don't know. I just as a former player of Gondor quite a lot, or Minas Tirith quite a lot, I just think that if you look at the hierarchy of their heroes, I'd always take Boromir because he's as good. Maybe not as good, but I think for the 60 points or 70 points, whatever it is, cheaper when they're all kitted out. I don't know, maybe 50 points, but it's a lot of points. I think he's just as good as LSR is with Mighty Hero. I always make an excuse not to take him over Boromir, or even maybe not Gandalf now because magic's a bit
With Boromir, it's also that +1 fight value bonus from his banner as the big swing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You ought to give Boromir a lance, and then he's roughly, not as consistently killy as LSR, but he's, almost as good. Or you give the banner, and then he's a fight 7, and he's got a 6 might. So to be honest, it's not a lot worse than having Mighty Hero. But yeah, I mean, with Gandalf the White, I put down a thing about should he not have Lord of the Astari as a rule. But I think once you get to these 220, 240 point models, there's a point where you just say they're too good. The thing for LSR I would include, if I had free reign to do so, is probably give him resistant to magic, because that's his last big weakness. And you could say, he's got the blood of Numenor, he's descended from Isildur or whatever, let him have resistant to magic. But yeah, I think after a point you just make them too good. Like Gil-galad at least is still weak to magic, and I think you need to have a weak spot for all heroes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't have that weak spot, there's just no feasible play to take him down besides, sheer bloody luck.
I guess with having Mighty Hero, the fight 7 thing's not necessarily important because you can always just strike for free anyway. But
yeah, and he's got an Elven Blade, so he's sort of fight 6.5.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe you've changed my mind. There you go.
I mean, what's got the thing is, as you get later in the game and you're starting to have to use your free might to do those vital hero moves, that's when you really need that strike as well for the fight 7. But what can you do?
Maybe what you could do to finish off this point is include the thing from the Legendary Legion where he says for Frodo, and everybody gets +1 fight value for that turn, and then you've got fight 7 LSR for a turn. Right, my next one is fire rules. This became a thing immediately with the new edition because everybody flicked through their armies of Middle-earth, which I've got here, of Lord of the Rings, and they landed on the Moria page, and they said, oh my god, the Balrog looks unstoppable now. And it's not really wound up being the case. I'll come on to him later. But there is a section here where it says the Balrog is immune to any fire-based attacks or special rules, such as Dragon's Fire Breath or Set Ablaze. Fire is not a sort of standardized rule in the game, and yet lots of profiles do deal with it. You've got the Flame Burst magic power from Saruman and Kardush. You have got a Ruffian hero who can set terrain on fire. Thank you. You've got Flaming Brands for the bomb teams. You've got Flaming Ammunition for siege weapons, which is pretty much exclusively scenario play, but there you go. You have Breathe Fire from Smaug and Dragons. You have Sauron, I think, can set someone ablaze as one of his brutal power attacks.
Yeah, I think it's like something like you could choose one person, set them on fire instead of striking. It's something like that.
Yeah, it's to represent where he basically grabs Gil-galad by the throat and sets him on fire, which
turns him into a kebab.
Yeah. So look, I think the thing with I was going to come up with this rule for what you could do with fire and terrain, and then when I played Sam with the Scouring of the Shire campaign that we're doing on tabletop, we thought, oh, Rowan's got it. This has been here all along, and I've never known it. So yeah, I think with Dunland particularly, where you've got the burning of the Westfold, you could have, if you've got a flaming brand, you can try and set fire to terrain pieces, and then suddenly your opponent's got a situation where, like in Fog of War, they're like, okay, you want to go in this terrain piece, do you? Well, it's on fire, so you might die. Bit of tactic going on there. Reconnoiter, you can set up choke points by basically setting terrain pieces on fire. I always thought this would be a fun mechanic to do. It might be a bit of paperwork to keep track of everything, but I always thought they've said about fire-based rules, and I think if we could get an errata that just says, okay, this is how fire works, because Rowan's fire is different to the setting stuff alight, which is in the siege rules in Rohan at War, which is another place it crops up in. Rowan seems to have access to Fiend Fire from Harry Potter, where he sets it alight on a
fire from Thrones myself, but
so anyway, that would be a sort of wish fulfillment for me, is have some interesting rules based on fire. What you got, Sam?
You can also implement, as we've always said, like weaknesses to fire. For example,
yes, Ents need to be set on fire. The Orc archers in the Isengard list have got flaming arrows in the film. I mean, anyway, and you could write rules for what they can do as well. Yeah, lots to. That's the one thing I would really want. I haven't done mine in this is my top 10, but the fire rules are probably the one thing I would love to see the most.
It's also on top of that, which you say Fog of War, it's also it'd be a great thing for heirlooms.
Yeah,
you haven't got enough troops to guard 2 objectives, so you set one of them on fire, and then you go sit on the other side. You can either fight me, or you can wade through fire and try to get that.
Yeah, lots of fun. Lots of fun you could have with it, but some might argue it then moves a bit too far into D&D kind of role-playing territory. But I don't mind that.
I can just imagine the luck I'd have with that, which got to set wood on fire, go sit on guard one, say go get that one, watch them do exactly that, march through, get it, but half their army burns, game ends, they win. I go, oh.
Well, I played you at Conquer the Bridge or whatever it was, and the first 4 of my guys to try and swim across the river all drowned, and they weren't wearing armor or shields or anything. But you know, them's your luck.
Water.
Okay, what's your next rule then, Sam?
This one is one I'm sure Dan will be ecstatic to hear. Defenders of Minas Tirith Legion.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So it's got so obviously it has to be Gandalf the White will be leading, and then named heroes you could have Pippin, Veragon, Hurin, Irolas, Ingold, Captains of Minas Tirith. I'd say you limit the bounty guard to 4 if you're going to do that. Citadel Guard, you put a limit on that as well. It's got also special rules, like Gandalf says, like as an example. What was I saying? Like
or whatever comes through that gate.
Back to your post, so like everyone gets +1 courage, or it's like his sandfast is increased to 12 inches, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of things you could do with that. I was quite surprised it wasn't there in the first place, but I'm sure there's reasons for it.
Yeah, with the Gondor at War book, I was really surprised we didn't get Defenders of Minas Tirith or Osgiliath reclaimed either.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get it sometime, which it's just, you know, an obvious one to do at some point, isn't it?
All right, Josh, you got another one?
Not a rule.
Okay.
But it's a change that I'd like to see.
Yeah.
War gear options in troop kits.
Yeah.
For conversion purposes, for purposes of, you know, not everyone wants to take 444 or 888, whatever it is now.
Example, goblins. People don't want the bows.
It's not that.
If
you want them, obviously, I can understand why they don't do it, because you probably would get people not building some options, and I can understand that. But I think, you know, all the other Games Workshop game systems allow you to do that. If you've got multiple options on a troop choice, you can build them how you'd like. I would just like to see that from I like my Morannons or my Corsairs built in a certain way. I know the Morannons one's redundant because they have all the options, but again, you know, I don't really need pirates with bows because I have Arbalesters, so I'd like to build more normal pirates. So yeah, that's just a little change I would like to see. Maybe it's a bit gamey, but
we'll take Lothlorien. You get 4 shields per 12 troops, and virtually everybody wants shields on the front row and the spears.
Yeah.
So your only option therefore is either to buy more boxes for troops you're not going to use, or you use a blue stuff, green stuff press mold. Yeah.
Or you could like something like unreleased miniatures or something like that, and buy some of theirs for like £1.
Oh, wouldn't do that. The naughty IP stealers that I totally have used.
You got your only ways around it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Frostgrave and Gripping Beast and whatever do all these conversion sprues or excess war gear options, and it's just like, it can't be beyond GW to have an Easterling Pikes sprue that you can buy to convert the bowman. You know,
well, they've done it for the Gundabad, haven't they? So it's definitely a thing to think about. And
yeah, I mean,
it's been asked about at least once a year. It's these what's called like question answer sessions, like they've done after like tournaments or after day one of tournaments. And there's always someone who asks, "What about the like upgrade kits or conversion sprues and that?" And they say, "Yeah, that's definitely something we'll think about." But yeah, we still haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be in the kit. Like, you know, if they want the money from people buying more products, that's fair enough. Even just make it that there's a generic Middle-earth conversion kit or a generic Middle-earth war gear kit. You have one for elves, one for men, one for orcs or whatever. Because again, I know like a lot of the new plastic kits, the new Aemir kit, for instance, had 4 options, and obviously some people did buy 3 Aemirs to make 4. But anyway, so if they can do it for heroes, I think we should have the same. Obviously, I understand that some of the molds are very old now, and they're not going to make new ones because it costs a lot of money. But that's why you could make a generic Forge World weapon upgrade kit, and that solves the issue. And they don't have to make new plastic molds for the troops themselves, or Forge World molds, or whatever. So,
well, what I've been told by staff in years gone by is that heroes are one thing, but in terms of plastic troops, they would need to sell at least 10,000 units per sprue that they design, press, manufacture, etc. And given there's only 8,000 of us in the GBHL Facebook group to start with, and if you generously assume there's another 8,000 people who aren't in it that also play, you know, it's not as if everybody is going to go out and buy a new sprue of Moria goblins, even though that's the one thing I would really like to see redesigned. I think the ones from the Fellowship, the Numenor, the Rivendell elves, and the goblins with their 3.5 poses probably do need something new. The most feasible thing for that is probably just to have a conversion sprue from Forge World, so you can okay, here's the basic Moria Goblin model, and here's what you can make it look like.
Yeah. It's very, very hard to change that basic model, though.
Yeah, because
they're not great,
it's
are
the
they?
same pose, and then has it got a spiky helmet or not?
Or a Hulk shield, yeah.
Well, it's got the last alliance elves are definitely the ones I want to see a new design for. The swordsmen, anyway, because I mean they're all literally stand there, swords above their heads.
I actually liked the spearmen for the elves.
Yeah,
but
from spearmen, it's all they're great.
But yeah, the swordsmen are a bit awful. That's my one.
Okay.
A war gear kit for conversions and things.
The next one I've got on my list is having Nazgul of Dol Guldur changed a bit. If they are, I don't particularly like the fact that they're a hero of it's Valor, and then they can lead 15 Hunter Orcs. The only time we see them is when you've got the 9 of them together being led by the Necromancer. So they could be their own little White Council equivalent, and they'd still be reasonably viable, if not, tournament winning. Although I know Kalman's very good at getting podium results with his. I just think the one thing that cheeses it for me is using the might on the resurrection rolls, because it basically means that they respawn, you charge them, you swamp them, you kill them. They only do 1 roll per death. Doesn't matter how many times you roll to wound, and then it's I got a 2 pop. And it's so boring. It's just repetitive, and I just find it very frustrating. And then on the last turn, what they can do is just pop up and then leg it 6 inches back, so you can't kill their leader, you can't break them in the final turn. I don't particularly like dealing with them because they're just boring to play against. So I would say you can only use might on resurrection rolls if you have the Necromancer on the table, and then people might be a bit more cautious with them. You could say they can't lead troops because that doesn't really make sense in the thematic sense. Or finally, you could say that you roll all strikes to wound against them, and they've got to make a number of resurrection rolls the next turn equal to the number of wounds total that you did. And then it's sort of reasonably, killing them is doable, because for 75 points, especially the Lingering Shadow, which just hops around your backfield, taking out your support pieces, almost, you can do it with reckless abandon, because it's almost impossible to kill them. So I don't enjoy playing against them. That's what I would like to see them changed as. Moving on.
Very good one.
Okay. This one's a very self-serving one, so no apologies. Gundabad characters just want some more named ones for the Gundabad Legion itself, like Army of Army of Zolk rather. It's got just doesn't have to be anything mid-tier or anything. Could just be low-level heroes, just something to add some flavour to them as opposed to just simple captains. Just I just prefer having named heroes in my army as opposed to generic captains. I just find it a bit boring if it's Azog, captain, done.
Don't really see any of his.
I know it's where they'd have to be allowed to create some.
Oh, I'm sure they could. Don't get me wrong,
but they have done that before. I mean, it's got what's his face? Does Amda get a mention in the books, or is he just a made-up character?
I think most of the evil named heroes are basically GW made up, because Tolkien provides almost no named evil characters. So, I mean, even going through Gondor at War, Zagdush,
as you do, James,
Goroth, whatever he is, and then you got Dalamir, Delgamar, and Raza, and it's just okay. So you got free license to make all this up. I'm just curious because you would want them to have an interesting rule or something, because basically you got 175 points worth of Bolg or Azog, and then it drops all the way down to a 50-point captain.
225 you mount Azog because you have got White Warg. Like, you know me, it doesn't have to be anything like game breaking or like horrific to face. I just want something there, just something interesting. It could just be something as simple as saying, what's an example? Like they just get an extra will point or something stupid. Just something to differentiate them.
That's fair. So,
Josh, you got something else?
yeah, I'm going to nick one that you suggested before we started.
Yeah, fine.
Which would be the fact that Corsairs are a yellow alliance with Mordor when obviously you know, they have a whole campaign against the south coast of Gondor, and then they are on their way to ally with Mordor. I know maybe making it should be green. I don't know why it isn't green, but Harad is green. Not that I'm complaining, because as you all know, I love my Harad Corsair combination. But
yeah, I mean, from a balancing perspective, you could do horrendous things if you had a green Corsair and Mordor alliance. But yeah, I mean, thematically, they were literally sailing to war with them, and it's no more tenuous than a huge amount of the green allies that the good side have. Which should be a whole separate thing for me, because I started thinking, oh wait, they can ally with them, and then that does, but and I wound up with about 10 odd examples of where I think this doesn't quite work, or it's slightly too good, or whatever. Yeah. So I may do that as a separate list, separate video some point. But yeah, I agree. Corsairs probably should be yellow with Mordor, even if the rest of us think, please don't do it.
Green.
Like you say, I'd imagine it's just a balancing thing. Maybe like they looked at it and they thought maybe they should be green, but then, as you say, like it's all sorts of horrible ideas, Morainians with crossbows and all sorts of other things. And then you just think,
Shadow Lord.
Yeah,
it's no different to me going, I'll have a front warband of Abrakan Guard with Corsair Spears, though. It's the same thing, really.
I don't know. I'm just going off what happened. So maybe then they probably just said, well, you know what? They didn't actually make it to their allies, so we'll just use that as the excuse. I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just I just think for
I know logistically it makes sense, because I mean they are on their way. It's got like this tiny small print. No, technically you didn't actually make it there, so that doesn't count.
I mean, you know, at what stage does the Fellowship fight alongside Rivendell? So, and that's a green ally.
Well, there was a Barbara scene.
Never fight together till the very, very, very end.
I think that's for a Pelennor Fields thing, but yeah, I can see that. But my next one is heirlooms, which everybody hates.
Yeah,
I would change it so that you've got tokens being drawn out of a bag, so that when you're left with the Mexican standoff at the end of the game, where it's like, I've got one and you've got one, who's going to be forced to flip it first? The guy that has to flip it first doesn't have a 1 in 6, or they lose. It's a 50-50 at that stage. And also, I would have it so that if you've got it to a point where, because it says in the thing, you get 6 points if you have control of the relic. But it also says, or 3 points if you've got more in proximity of it than your opponent. And I would change that to be, you can have your 6 points for having it, but if you're completely surrounded by your opponent, they get the 3 points for having more within than your opponent as well. Because then that takes it from...
in the EAHC event, and I actually ruled it that way.
I think that's how it should be, because otherwise it's just unwinnable for whoever is unlucky enough to not find it. When I went to Ardacon last year, and there's like the first scenario is heirlooms, and 250 people just going,
oh yeah.
It needs adjusting, and I was really disappointed that they didn't do anything with it in the match playbook in February or January or whatever it was. But anyway,
I think you don't necessarily have to give away the points to the person surrounding you. You could just simply lower the points of it. Just say 5 points if you had the heirloom. That way, if you achieve every other objective, but they don't achieve anything else, you still win it.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's kind of like Seize the Prize, though, isn't it? It's the same sort of thing.
Well, it's got, at least in Seize the Prize, you have to actively take their stuff and run past them, like as opposed to running to your own and sit there and defend.
yeah, if you just grab it and then just sit and defend, you only get 3 points because it's in your board half, and your opponent can still kill your leader, break you, and win. You know.
True.
The only point where Seize the Prize becomes awful is if you've got like a flying hero, and then you're just like, here, Mr. Fellbeast, boom,
or an all
gone.
eagle list.
Yeah, filthy eagles. Hey, Dan. Right, so that was heirlooms. Sam, what was your next one?
This is just one of them. I think I was running out of ideas, and I was kind of threw something out there.
Okay.
It continues off what I was talking about earlier, like elves and that. Last Alliance, I'd just like to see some more troop variety as opposed to just Numenorians, elves, heroes. And it's, you know, just like have some variety with the troops. Like this doesn't have to be exactly what I'm talking about, but you know, like some like example, elf berserker or Numenorian centurion. Something just add in some more flavour to them.
Yeah, well, the Last Alliance source book has sort of been it's sort of like it's like nanotech. It's the thing that will be coming in a couple of years, but never will. I think they were intending to do it, but because they put an Aryan in the book, and then suddenly Amazon said, "Oh, we're going to do the Second Age as a TV series." So possibly GW higher ups have said, "Oh, let's wait and we can try and cash in on that." And then that was delayed for a year, and the Tom Sheppy, the script supervisor, was fired or left the project, and then various actors came and went, and then Corona happened. So it could be that they're waiting a while. I think potentially with the Quest of the Ring Bearer, they have an opportunity to do a scenario or two based on Isildur and Sauron having the ring, but that's probably been sent to print long before now. So
Probably sat in a warehouse somewhere, to be honest, at this point.
Yeah. So Last Alliance as a source book, as its own legendary legion, is something we all want to see, but who knows when.
I'm sure we'll change our minds once we see it and we've played against it. Oh God, it's so overwhelming. Please stop. No.
Elrond as the standard bearer could be quite cool, because the thing that really for the hi-fi value with the elves and the numenor, if you suddenly had a 6-inch banner held by Elrond, who is almost unkillable, that could be interesting. But
fight 10 Gil-galad.
Probably wouldn't go that far, to be honest. But, yeah, okay. Josh, have you got one?
Let's see if I can think of one quickly.
Great Beast of Gorgoroth in Gothmog's Legion. There you go.
I actually like the Witch King to be in Gothmog's Legion. I know that wouldn't make sense. Well, it does kind of make sense because he's on the panel at some point at the same time as Gothmog. Maybe not on a Fell Beast because, technically that dies pretty quick when drops it into sushi. But
well, he goes through the gate on his horse, doesn't he, in the book?
Yeah.
That's where he has the confrontation with Gandalf, and Gandalf says, "Get out." Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could have a thing about, igniting the sword, or I don't know.
There's a lot of changes to Legendary Legions I'd like to make in general, to be honest. I think some of them are very good and some of them are a bit meh. But that could be a whole topic for a podcast in itself.
I would push for the Great Beasts, because where else are they going to go? There is a possibility that you homogenize Gothmog's Legion into just sort of Mordor, but it is still quite restrictive, even with what we've discussed. But that's where the Great Beasts are. They pull Grond to the gate, and I think that would add a different dimension to that list, and potentially you'd get people using it, which is a really nice model and has a really fun rule set. But
I think I've only ever seen a Great Beast on a table once, which is quite sad.
Yeah, same.
We saw it at Strider Cup the year before last. I think Bubbly and whoever he was paired with had it.
Alameda.
Let's go. Right. Going back quickly to what you talked about, the flaming sword and that could be another one for your flaming attacks, CJ. No one as a weakness.
Yeah. This is my hour. My sword is on fire.
Once per game, the Witch King can spend a will point to ignite his sword for the turn.
Yeah, I'll have some fun
Cool.
with that. I'll link that to my next one with the Gothmog's Legion, and that is the hatred rule, which I think is,
Your favourite?
I just think is unbalanced. You pay points for a situational rule in a matched play list building structure, which means that, okay, let's take Dunland. They've got a hatred of Rohan, for example. So basically, you're paying points for a rule which is only ever useful in one specific matchup. There's lots of legendary legions for Rohan, so but it means most of the time it's wasted. And the Gothmog's Legion amplifies this by having Gothmog's hatred bubble amped out to a 12-inch radius, which basically means if they run into Lake Town, Gondor, Harad, Easterling, whatever, you've suddenly got a huge
Well, it's also
advantage.
It's a lot less specific Gothbox one because it's just men rather than Rohan. So
yeah, I just think it's really unbalanced in a match play list building setup. I don't particularly like it. You pay points for a rule that's only situationally useful, and then when it is useful, it's really unbalanced. It just means that one side is starting at a huge disadvantage. So I think hatred as a scenario rule, where you say in this game, Gothmog's people will get +1 to wound, and then you write the scenario so that it's still balanced. That's fine, but in general play, I'm not a fan of it.
Right.
Sam, what do you got next?
My sixth one, I've got a scenario suggestion, which is one that I think I mentioned to you both here and there. Last Stand of the Easterlings. Because in Gondor at War, which got they are clearly at the Battle of Penlor, and you've got scenarios for the Mahers, you've got scenarios for Harad, obviously Mordor. Easterlings, though, just don't feature in any of it at all. And it's it's quite a big. Well, I don't know. I can't remember the books very well, but I remember it's quite a prominent part of the Last Stand of Easterlings, where they're just standing fighting to the last man until they're dead. It just seems like a good scenario to do. I mean, it might be one that they do whenever they move over to things like Erebor, if they revisit that, because that would be dwarves, the Easterlings alongside the Man of Dale. And if Easterlings are featuring it in the East, then maybe that could be one. They just jump to the Penlor and say, here's the Last Stand of Easterling. It would be quite fun to do.
I mean, Easterlings in general just need a bit of help, to be honest. But we'll get, hopefully, a War in the North book someday. And
to quote what I can't remember who it was. It was either Rob or it was Adam. When they were getting a Q&A, it was saying when you're saying you're going to visit certain places and scenarios and that, would one of them be like a War in the North? And Adam's face kind of lit up and went, that would be exactly the sort of thing we might be looking at. So for denying, but it sounds like it.
So you get Iron Hills, Lake Town, and Easterlings, and then maybe you could also do the Wood Elves when they take over Dol Guldur. Yeah, that'd be cool stuff.
Also, you have the war during the War of the Ring. So you've got Eastlings versus Dale and Erebor and
Lothlorien versus Moria. Versus Dol Guldur with its Khamul-led army.
Oh, is that where Khamul is? I thought he was at the Palanor Fields. Oh,
he might be. I'm sure this is where we need James to confirm things. But I know that Khamul was the Lords of Dol Guldur, but I don't know if he was present at the battle. But be a thing.
Okay, well, we're coming towards the end of my. I've got a huge list, to be honest, but I picked some ones to discuss today without making the pod go extra long. But the next one I would potentially like to see is you can't strike against monsters. Because at the moment, we had the Hobbit edition where they said monsters nobody ever uses, they're pants, so here you go, here's some brutal power attacks. Then they were abused to hell and back. So then we had the new edition, and they said, okay, Hurl works in a very specific way now. They changed the distance of it, and they changed the direction of it. You can still barge, you can still rend, that's fine. But yeah, they just got a big sort of clamp down on them, and the huge base presents a problem where they're difficult to maneuver, they're difficult to reach places. And what generally just happens in any given game is they get surrounded, one hero strikes up, you tear it down in one go. So if you've got monsters that are fight 6, fight 7, etc., and you say, okay, fair enough, you're not allowed to strike against them, because if strike is to represent, you dueling a enemy hero to a standstill, that's one thing. But if they say, right, you can run your Aragorn into the cave troll, but you can't just auto beat it by doing the free strike, then suddenly you've got a bit of fear around charging a monster. But it also doesn't penalize, e.g., you've paid 200 points for Elendil, he can still run over a cave troll.
I would be careful to make sure you say, like, you can't strike against warrior monsters, because, for example, Sauron is considered a monster.
Yeah, fair.
But warrior monsters, yeah, you want them to have some teeth, but at the minute, they run in. For example, against dwarves, they run in, Dwalin will quite happily charge them, a load more will surround with axes, and then piercing strikes to the axe, and everyone kills it.
Yeah. It's far too easy to take. Like, warrior monsters to me are just not worth bothering with at the moment. If I'm taking a monster in the list, it's either a fell beast or a troll chief or birder or the goblin king, or something with might points, because then you can set up, I'm going to do a heroic combat, move to there and hurl, and that's useful. That was another thing with hurl, it knocks over the whole combat and not just what it passes through, and so that you can't just flatten a line and then have them all be trapped. And because in lists like Moria, where you don't get access to banners, cave trolls, dwellers are not consistent enough. You fluff the roll, and then you're marmalized quite easily. Just if you can't strike against monster, I mean, that would potentially make Gullivar horrific. But
as I say, though, if it says hero monsters, you can still strike. It's fine.
Fair enough. I wonder if that would then balance it where, like, no, I'm going to take the Mordor troll and not the troll chief because you can't strike against it. That'd be interesting to see what happens, but I think monsters need a little bit of help at the moment.
However, that troll chief would also have 1 extra defense and 2 might as well. So
yeah, because otherwise, you get the troll chief and the black gates open list, and it's just, oh god, can't stop it.
I love the troll chief in that list anyway.
I do too.
I don't. He was a horrible little bastard.
Always been a favourite of mine. The troll chief profile.
That was one of my favourite lists at the start of last year.
I'm not bitter. You're bitter.
Sam, what's your next one?
This is one that someone suggested on the GBHO ages ago. I can't remember for the life of me who it was.
Mm-hmm.
But think of it like this. If you want to move first in the turn, you hope you get priority, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't work, you've always got your heroes in range. You think, right, well, if I need to, this guy's going to do a heroic move.
Uh-huh.
But when you want to go second, for example, you want to guarantee a cavalry charge without big repercussions for it.
Uh-huh.
Like, you just have to hope you roll badly enough to go second. But you have no way of enforcing that with mice. So what someone suggested a while ago is heroic delay is an option. Like, basically, like, your hero says, like puts up his fist in the air and says, wait, now.
That makes me think of Mel Gibson in Braveheart, where the cav charges come and he's just like, hold, now.
That was going to be my exact thing for, like, you do your hero's heroic delay, and then when he wants to involve a hero, you say, I'm going to do hold.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think the idea is quite good, because there are definitely some armies, like, if you cause terror, you want your opponent to go first and then mop up what's happened,
Yeah. Like, example, cavalry lists would really benefit from it, because then they're not going to spend half their turns waiting for the moment to charge, are they?
No.
It also gives you that opportunity to be able to use your might to influence the game again. Which, I mean, I can't see any situation where you'd want to do it with shooting, because that would just be insane. No, I want to shoot second with my surviving archers. With combats, maybe you could do it so you guarantee your combat goes last, I can't think why you'd want to.
Well, if you've got a banner effect hero, and then your opponent calls a heroic combat, you don't want that to happen first because you don't want that hero dead. Because
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Heroic delay. I'm going to slow down time for this moment.
Like part of strategy is obviously timing, isn't it? You wait for the perfect moment to strike rather than just going when you can.
Mm.
Well, talking of might and being able to use it, here's the Balrog. We've come back to it. We've spoken about fire. Yeah, when he first came out, there was an interview with, I say when he first came out, when the new edition first came out, there was an interview, I remember, of Warhammer TV with Jay, and he's saying, people are coming up to me and saying, I don't know how to handle the Balrog. And Jay was saying, well, that's good. That's how I intended to write him. But it didn't take long, to be honest. You can kite him so easily by just... Because he only moves 6 inches, and as we've just said with monsters, with the massive base, that puts a limit on how far you can move around things to get into combat. I think the biggest problem, because they wrote the whip strike as a rule to help with that. You pull something into combat, you marmalize it, you do the free heroic combat to move on. The issue is, if you have only got warrior models in range, then the whip virtually always kills them.
Mm.
So here's the thing, you've got a shoot value of 3+, so if you've moved it's a 4, then when you hit them, it's strength 7 or 8 hits, and most of the time you kill on a 3 or a 4, and then the Balrog's just stood there looking really silly. So the first thing I would say is, this guy, while accelerating backwards, managed to hit the ankle of an old man on the bridge above. He should have a 2+ shoot value for that whip. And then you could potentially say the impact hit of it is optional, because if you just want to pull them in and then do the heroic combat, that's a lot more dangerous. But in addition to that, what you notice with the profile is it's got 10 will points that are completely useless if your opponent does not have magic. So you're paying 10 will points is roughly the equivalent of 50 points. He's fearless, so courage is not an issue. So it's magic resistance. He doesn't have any magic himself. And actually, what I thought you could do potentially with the Balrog is have him have a couple of low impact spells, so then he's got something to use it on.
I think you should have like a transfix or
not transfix, because then that means he can then just one shot marmalize enemy heroes. But he stands there and he flares up, so potentially you could have him have blinding light to provide passive protection to goblins. He hasn't got might, so he can't channel it. And you could also have instill fear. I'm not saying give him a huge retinue, but if he can sort of do a instill fear, roar at them or whatever, and then the lines break up a bit, goblins can get their traps in, and then that army bonus works better. Yeah. The only other thing I had written down is potentially have him able to move as fire. Some people have said give him fly, give him monstrous charge. That's way too good, and he's not that mobile from the way he's portrayed in the films. But if you could say that he can opt to turn into the fireball as he is in the film, and then suddenly he's got an 8-inch move and he can move through things, potentially setting them on fire as he goes, that's a lot scarier. And then he jumps out of the fire like
that kind of makes sense. The Dweller's got an 8-inch move, and they're basically like baby Balrogs, aren't they?
Mini Balrogs, yeah.
So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, as it is, you can just keep guys away from the Balrog. You can just sort of do all the fighting where he's not and win that way. So I think he needs a bit of help anyway.
Just cutting back a bit, where you're saying like people approaching Jay saying, "Oh, I don't know how to deal with the Balrog," and Jay's saying, "Oh, it's got good. That's what I take." I'm just mentally picturing the Burns put his fingers together and going, "Excellent."
Crafty old Jay. What's your next one, Sam?
I was going to do Grimbold and his horse idea, but we kind of quickly
Stop flogging that horse.
Went and stole my parade.
Wait, can't take a horse?
No, apparently not.
Come on,
nobody
Jay,
noticed.
Sort it out, mate.
I mean, apparently Lackland got a little bit upset about it, but you know.
If you haven't seen Damien's diorama for this, by the way, go look for it. It's brilliant.
It's got, yeah. So instead of taking one that I replaced earlier with the two-handed mounted, I think basically more named Uruk heroes for like Helm's Deep and that example. So yeah, obviously at the minute you've got a generic captain who gets an extra might points and extra attack. I just quite like. You don't even have to change that profile. You can just like give them a random name and just say, "Here you go." Or it's got that's his name. I just wanted to have a bit of character again. Like there was an unofficial thing where they named him Mog. I don't know if there was any like actual like reading behind that, or they just chose a name that sounded about right. Maybe have like an engineer captain who's named who has some sort of special ability.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, with the emphasis on the bombs and the ballistas, if you had an engineer specialist.
Yeah.
You'd have to be careful not to make that overpowered, but yeah, that would be quite interesting.
Yeah. Or like for example, the berserker who sets off the bomb, he gets an auto 6 on it or something like that.
Yeah, a berserker captain, Jesus. How much power? 3 attack, 5-3, strength 5, defense 7.
You fight 5, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you from converting one. I mean, you just simply give them like heavy armor, give them like two-handed weapons, just like convert a berserker captain, but just give them named ones. That sort of idea. We've got also the two-handed axe scouts. I feel should be a named profile, but obviously they're bound by legal jargon and all that sort of thing. Like he didn't actually have a name in the film, so therefore we can't. But it'd just be nice to have that sort of thing if we can.
That has not stopped GW in the past. Like, this guy has no name. He does now. Here's Guritz. Here's the Enforcer.
I think was named in the the credits or something.
Yeah,
but either way, to quote the Emperor, do it.
Yes. Rightio. I've got 2 left on the list. I'll just do them together. The first one is the specials pool. Now, pool play from the new rule book, I absolutely adore, because it means that you don't have Guritz and Madril as auto includes, because there's so many, Maelstrom. No, you have one Maelstrom game and that's it. You don't have multiples of Contest of Champions, Lords of Battle, etc., which really works against people that do horde infantry. So it's good that
play 7 games, you might get a repeat.
Yeah. So the structure is good. The one pool I don't really like the way it's structured is the specials pool, because all of those are assassination sort of things. You've got Fog of War, you've got the one that actually is called Assassination, and you've got Ill Met by Moonlight, which is all about killing enemy heroes. And the reason I don't like it is because it puts you in a position where if you're running a list that relies on having independent heroes or weaker heroes, you're stuffed, basically. If you run Lake Town with, the girls and Alfred, if you want to take a drummer with your Uruk scouts or whatever, it's just a massive disincentive to me. You do Defenders of Helm's Deep, and you're like, oh, I could have Aldor and Haleth, and then, well, no, because they're just easy targets. If you go to a tournament which is, 3 games long, the absolute bare minimum, you got a 50% chance of still dealing with that pool. And then it's just more, it's just a higher percentage the more games you put on top of that. So, there is an element of skill where you can shield some of these from. They're all like shamans, which for goblins and to a degree more Mordor orcs are sort of compulsory almost. They're too easy to take out. So, because of COVID, I haven't managed to do a lot of events where this pool structure is in place, so I haven't play tested it. But that's whenever I'm building a list at the moment for the hell of it, I just think, is there a point to taking that weak hero? Is it absolutely necessary? Because otherwise I'm just giving my opponent easy VPs in that pool.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you would do to change it, but...
Well, you've always got the possibility that what will happen to me happens. Like where I think it was in Fog of War, I fired a black darts as a sheer spite at one of your little girls in your army. I took her out, killed her, like celebrated, and then turns out you were defending the other one.
I mean, while I don't disagree with you, the pool itself is a bit It's a 1 in 6, and then you're not going to change your army for a 1 in 6. You'll just hope that you get a lucky draw in that scenario, I guess.
But over the course of a tournament, it's a minimum of 50% you'll have that pool, and then if it's a full game, 66, and so on. So yeah, you're gonna have to ride your luck pretty hard to not have to deal with it.
Yeah,
I
but
guess it's having the tools.
obviously you've got other pools where your list that you are going to take. So say Lake Town, for instance, where you've got the same things for Reconnoiter, where you're probably going to do very well, or
actually, Recon's probably the one it struggles most with because of lack of mobility. But anyway, I get your point.
So yeah, it swings and roundabouts. So
I mean, that might just sort of make life more interesting, where you think of it as, well, actually, no list can deal with all 6 pools equally well. If there's a weak pool for almost any builds, then actually maybe that makes it more balanced as a whole. And then if you still manage to get a win at your weak thing, then more credit to you.
I mean, you do it on the reg, mate, when you play battle with goblins or Reconnoiter with goblins, or you've got an uncanny ability to win scenarios that I'm like, how's he won that? How's he managed that?
Because you have to concentrate really hard.
Yeah. So I guess if it's a casual event, I can see what you're saying, but
no, actually, I think you might have changed my mind on that one. So that takes me. Sorry, Sam.
But yeah, it's got thing is, if you try to prepare for all scenarios, you just end up becoming like a jack of all trades and master of none. So
I always. Oh, sorry, go on, Sam. I'm cutting you off.
Then all your games are going to be fairly tough because you haven't got one where you'll be really strong, as opposed to having that one game where you might be a bit of a struggle, but you might get a bit lucky.
I always build a list, and I think, all right, I've got a good chance in these 4 scenario pools. Then I've got 2 scenario pools where I might want a very specific scenario. So again, it's just about list building to the best of your ability. List building for as much of the things as you can, but I don't think you can ever cover all 18 scenarios. It's just not possible.
No.
I don't think there's one list that... I mean, maybe there is, but...
I'm sure in the meta, somebody's perfected, this will do everything.
I'm sure there's a green 3-army combination that can do everything.
I've got 2 in mind already.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm just saying for me personally, I don't... As much as I love my combination armies, or one of them in particular... Again, I still realise that my list has some very large, swings. A Lord of Battle is sometimes very good for me, but having a whole army that's defense 4 is also sometimes very bad for me.
Indeed.
It's just one of those. You kind of try and build a list for as many eventualities as you can, but ultimately, you're going to struggle at a couple, and then just hope you don't roll bad in that pool. Like Assassination for me is normally okay because all my heroes are somewhat killy. But
they're also somewhat squishy because I don't think you've got any heroes over defense 5.
No, it is very 50-50. So
I think it's a decent chance at all scenarios. You need like a mix of a survivable hero, a good fighting backup hero to do your kills for you, a bit of magic to have some sort of control over mobilising the right people at the right time. Heroic march, so you've got the manoeuvrability, some cavalry to do speeding past on recon, that sort of thing.
You need everything, says Sam. I don't think there is any list that does all of that consistently.
Well, it's got off the top of my head, Battle 5 Armies does most of it. It's only the cavalry where they're a little bit slow because they've only got Iron Hills, haven't they?
Or Mirkwood Cav, but the issue with that is that you're going to have very small model count. so you can't control the battlefield as well. No, I think you've convinced me, to be honest. Yeah, because if that means that every single list has, a drawback somewhere, then actually that makes it a relatively level playing field. Because otherwise, everybody would flock to the same army that can cover everything.
Yeah, like elves and hobbits used to.
Corsair Reavers backed by Morannons for the Shadow Lord. Those are the dark days.
I remember watching James Long play at Ardacon, the first one, with that list. This Corsair Reavers backed by Morannons and the Shadow Lord, and he was playing. I think he was playing an all-mounted Rohan list, and it was just horrendous. Like both shooting from both. He had Gandalf the White, he had the Shadow Lord. And it was just like there's two armies that literally are the hardest counters for each other. But yeah, that army was. I played him once at Desolation Stockport, and that army just chewed through my goblins. Absolutely, just went for them like paper. I was like, this is fun.
Yeah, I had the same. I don't know if it was him exactly, but he had that combination, and yeah, it was against my very, very average Isengard army, my first ever event, and it was okay. My very expensive troops are going, just walking into a blender. Although I did manage to get Ugluck to strike and kill his Shadow Lord on Felbeast, so like, haha.
Nice.
We didn't see that one coming. Of course, I lost the scenario like overwhelmingly, but small things.
You got some small victory back.
I mean, 5/3 attacks that are strength 4 is horrendous because of or it could be higher than that because of the axes at the time.
Yeah, the axes used to take them up to like strength 6.
Yeah.
Have some of this. Was that still when spears used to be you just give +1 attack to the guy in front? No, I think that's before the Hobbit. Anyway, final one for me then, to keep the podcast down to a reasonable listening length, is the Moria Goblin Drum. I've talked a bit about Moria, they're my main army. Here's the thing, Goblin Drum is 75 points, and it gives you +1 courage, which is pretty much superfluous when you've either got a Shaman or the Balrog, so you're fearless. It drops your opponent's courage by 1, which is not that helpful because it doesn't accumulate with the Balrog's Harbinger of Evil, and you've got almost no terrifying stuff in your army unless you've got Giant Spider, which you have to have Ashrak to unlock, or Druzag, or you've got a Cave Troll, a Dweller, Balrog. And that's pretty much it. I don't know, Marauders still cause terror. So it's not that helpful. Even when you break your opponent, if your opponent's running a good army, -1 courage is not that much help.
Does it count as a banner?
It does not count as a banner. This is it gives you an 18-inch banner reroll. It does not count as a banner for VPs, which is what I really wish it would do. Because you start at a disadvantage in 3 scenarios because Moria has no access to a true banner. Whatever. Right. The thing I thought was actually drums for any other race give you the move bonus. And I thought that is what Moria really struggles with, is mobility. So if you could have it so that you play the drums and the people that start within 18-inch can move, with an additional +3, that would be really useful for Moria. Whereas a lot of the effects it currently has are a bit, because even a banner that's 18-inch, if you've got fight 2 troops or fight 3+ with you got your shenanigans for trapping and Groblog, it's still not that helpful.
And it's fixed, right?
You can pick it up and move it as a heavy object, but you can't play it in the same turn. There is a thing about if your opponent kills the drummers, they can give the drumsticks to a warrior within, let's see, an inch here, I think it says. 1 inch, yep. So that means you've got to keep guys in reserve at the back to stop it getting shot. And all it takes is your opponent to walk up to it, spend 1 fight phase unengaged, and just put a knife through the drum skin, and it's gone. And it's 75 points, which in a Moria list is quite a lot.
Instead of the Black Shield drum.
Black Shield drum is still a thing that can do the run and drum, but you can only pass it on to other Black Shields, which is something for another day, because I don't think they're worth taking in a Moria list. They're way too expensive for what they are. And they can run and drum, but it's only a 12-inch effect, and it's the same
Right.
rules otherwise. So that's the trade-off.
Okay, fair enough.
In some boards, you'll have the option of being able to put the drum behind a rocky bit of terrain, and you just camp it there. Just okay, there's the combat. Yeah, I think I would rather have it be that it can give VPs for being a banner, help the movement, and not bother with the courage stuff.
Right.
That's for me.
That's
Sam,
fair.
Sam, you got any more?
I've got two more. Doing back to back.
Yeah.
First one, siege towers. Like, we don't actually have any models for those at all, but I
Used
think
to.
they're quite vital to attacking siege offense, isn't it?
Well, I've got the old, I think they were Warhammer Fantasy ones. I think they said just use those. We're not doing a specific one for SPG.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
referring to like having an orc siege tower or something, because like obviously if you've played a siege game, what you find is if you only have ladders and a battering ram, the ladders you are basically just waiting for that one lucky time where you kill something, get onto the wall, and hope to God that thing doesn't die before you can start opening up a breach. If you alternatively, you hope that you can get the gate down quickly and start flooding through to force them off the walls to defend their courtyard.
Yeah.
Well,
they are siege equipment in War in Rohan, so the siege towers do exist, but yeah, we don't. You're gonna have to make one out of matchsticks.
Yeah, I've tried doing that before. It was all right, but it just like the minute it's all knocked over, it just shattered on the floor, and I just couldn't bother to remake it. But like in my experience, when you've used a siege tower, that's a whole different ballgame. Because you have this wave of troops coming to the wall, as opposed to like going one at a time, hoping that you don't get killed by the three guys defending the wall. So you get this actual thing that's going to put a proper hole in their defences.
Yeah, still bottlenecked, but yeah, it's much more effective than the wobbling about on the ladders and trying to bash down the gate.
Yeah. Plus, also you're becoming like across at their level, so you're not going to be fighting across a barrier. If anything, if you're above them, they might be fighting you on a barrier.
Yeah.
So then suddenly you reverse just swaps like the take around, haven't you? I just quite like to see like a siege tower build for siege games.
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, siege games or scenario play. There are some stuff that possibly should remain because ladders and battering rams are siege only games, and maybe you could make an argument that siege bombs ought to be as well. I mean, that would completely destroy the legendary legion, the siege of Helm's Deep, whatever it is. But I'm not sure they were ever sort of intended to be open warfare tools. They're supposed to be a big battering ram, essentially. But
they're intended to be used to block off your own army, sit in the game when you fancied. No.
Well, we can't do that anymore. So
they used to be, yeah. The last thing is going back to the whole like War in the North idea, an old Dane profile. As we know, the story for that is like they're defending Erebor. I believe they're defending Dale actually. They start losing the fight. King Brand is killed, and then Dane stands over his body and defends him until he's killed himself. The defenders then like hole up inside Erebor. They get word that Sauron's been defeated. The Easterlings retreat. So basically, they're like creating like a Dane profile based off that. So you can take some Hobbit stuff, transfer it across, having the venerable like rule from the old Dane profile. Where he's 250 years old, so like Bombury starts re-rolling things to do a jump test, that sort of thing, or rolls 2 dice at the same time, chooses the lowest.
Yeah.
But then the special rule I'd add in is like if he fights alongside King Brand, when Brand dies, put a marker down like you do for Theoden and Awen for Aomer and that. And if he's within 3 inches of that body, then he gets to re-roll failed wounds. Something just give him a nice bit of flavour and that, stick to that theme.
Pretty cool, yeah, pretty cool.
I think that'd be a nice little idea. Who knows, maybe as we're speaking, Jay's already doing that. We don't know.
Jay's just taking notes, listening to our podcast, going, yes, all of that.
Yes, do my for me.
Yeah, why does Durnhelm not have Eowyn's rule about protecting Theoden's body? It's very strange, yeah. Because Eowyn's like, I will kill you if you touch him. Durnhelm's just like, he's dead. What you gonna do?
Cool.
Anyway,
Right, well,
Yeah.
I think I had 6 or 7, but still. Um,
That's something.
guys, obviously, if you've got this far, I haven't plugged at all ever. I'm getting rusty, guys. It's been too long. If you've got any changes you'd like to see, with the rule changes, profile changes, scenario changes, model changes, if anything you'd like to see, put it in the comments below. Like the video, guys. It helps us out. Gets us more subscribers. We actually got like 8 or 9 last week, which was pretty cool. So,
that's,
the week before.
is that down to James and his dwarf lore?
I think we had 2 in a week, didn't we, or within a short period of time, with the FAQ one and then the law one. So yeah, it was nice to have some interaction, and just leave us a comment what changes you'd like to see, and maybe we can pick some of those as an actual topic for an episode and go a bit more in depth. I think CJ's got a few things that he could talk about in depth. So yeah.
All right.
Right, so once again, thank you guys for listening. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.